So, today we're going to see how we can use asset bundles into our game. What are asset bundles? Basically, they are assets or files, if you will, that we do not have to load from the start or have in our project from the start, but we can either stream them or make them load from a file after we have made a build to our game. What that could mean is it's basically a way of how we can do something like DLC support into your game or mod support, and we're going to see two of these cases, both streaming and loading from a file, and we're going to see another cool application. So basically, in our previous video we saw how to change characters into the whole third-person character controller we've created in the last couple of 10 videos. And basically what we were doing is have a list of characters and load them and decide which one to use and loading from that list. So we basically had our system that it comes down to just passing a game object that has an animator into our own system, and everything is automated from there, and we can simply do something like this, okay, that with one click we can change characters, and if I click start game I will be inside the level and I can play, so on. This is one application. The other application, and it will be as simple as disabling one script and enabling another. If I hit play right now, it will load levels, and now instead of loading the models from the files in the list in my iOS, in my OS anyway, okay, it now loads them from the web. Now keep in mind that I didn't include the textures on the files because these are actually files I have uploaded into a server, okay, so that's why I just have one material, and we will indicate which ones we're going to use locally or we're going to download from the server by the prefix of web. Okay, basically both of these models are 6 megabytes. If I add textures, that will have been around 40 megabytes, okay, depending on how many textures you will have. This is something you have to keep in mind. And if I click start game, it will play seamlessly, as just like having our controller inside, just like setting it up in the end. Now the cool thing that we're actually going to see, I'm going to switch it back to load asset local, is if I actually go and build right now, I have already made a build, okay, and let's say I have sent it to my players. What I can actually make them do is, let me load a whole completely new project, so I'll pause the video. So this is a completely new project, okay. The only thing that it has over here, it has one script, the prefab, which is the model, are my models which I can use or your players can use, okay, and a folder called asset bundles that a script needs. So you can either create a video or just wrap this script into a DLL, so your players do not have to write code, but as you can see, it's a really simple script. We're only going to need the namespace of the Unity editor. You can name the public class whatever you want, okay, and you can have over here your menu item, which just creates a build asset bundles button over here, okay, and then just a static void build all asset bundles, and use build pipeline dot build asset bundles, and this is the folder. The assets is the folder where all your assets, all your projects are, and this is the empty asset, the empty folder. Of course, you can name it everything you want. Okay, so this model is just a simple model, nothing extra, and an animator. Okay, we make it a prefab. Let's make it once again. So I delete the previous one. Okay, so we have now a model and a prefab. To actually use an asset bundle, I can come over here, and I've already created the asset bundle name. So I will call it, let's actually create it from the start, or maybe let's just use this one. Okay, just click new. I'm going to call mine character models mod, and the only thing right now that it's important from this script is the prefix of mod in the end, and we're going to see why when we actually see the asset bundle script. Okay, so the character models is what you tell your players or your modders to actually create. Okay, the name is basically what you will set them to go and make. So what they have to do now is come over here and say click build asset bundles. As you can see, there's no dependencies. There's nothing that connected to the previous project, so you do not even have to send anything to your modders or whatever, your users. Okay, since these are basically just a game object and an animator, we won't even use this. Okay, we do not have to care. The asset bundles creates the manifest, which holds some information about your asset bundle, and the actual asset bundle. Now, here is one cool thing we can do about it. So if I right click and click Show Explorer, it's going to show me where it's located into my Explorer. Okay, which basically is this file. I do not hit play or even build. Keep in mind that the script we've created over here will have a problems building because it uses the namespace of Unity editor. And basically the two files I'm interested in are character models mod and character models prefix mod. Okay, keep this in mind. Let's leave it aside and let's go back to our previous project. So we're back, and let's say we have finished creating our game and I want and go and build. Now I have to include my resources scene, which is this scene, and the level, which is the actual level. Okay, the target platform I want. Keep in mind that asset bundles have to be created for each target platform. Okay, it's different. Now there is an asset bundle manager that is created and a project that's created by Unity settings, by Unity themselves, but we're not using it over here. Okay, so I'm going to build, and when it's done I'll be back. So I finished my build and I get this thing. Okay, I run my executable. It's loading the asset bundles, and it loads only the two characters we've created, and we have which is the ones I use inside my editor. Okay, let's close this. Now let's go to our other project, the one we created before. Okay, and use the new asset bundles we created from that other project. Now what I can do is go into my data folder, into my streaming assets folder, and just take these two files, copy them, and paste them over here. I will go back to my builds and hit game test again, hit play. We will wait until it's load all the new models, and you can see that I now have the new model which a user just sent me, or let's play it that way. Okay, so somebody that didn't have any dependencies on our project, didn't have anything that has to do with our project, just sent us, just created his own character, his own model, with, of course, he had the rig, and sent it to us with an asset bundle, and I can actually load it into the game, and you saw how easy it was. And if I click start game, it's actually like I have it in my, it's like I set it up in my own project. Okay, so you can understand how cool this is and how easy it makes to make moddable content, and everything works since the rig, I know it's identical because I made all of them. Okay, it's basically everything will work and be at the correct position. So let's see how we actually, the stuff that has to do with the asset bundles mainly, and later on we're going to see actually how we can tailor it into the third-person shooter project we have over here. Okay, so let me pause it for a second and close everything that is not really related, and we can continue. So back into Unity. Now the two things we're going to need and to use that has to do with the folders. We're going to need a folder called asset bundles, because over here it's where you're actually going to create your asset bundles. Okay, and the streaming assets, which is a folder that always comes with if you include a streaming assets folder into your project, Unity will include it into its build. Now keep in mind, on some platforms this might not be true, so you actually have to research the platform you are actually targeting, and of course everything has its own pros and cons. Okay, so if you haven't followed along the third-person shooter series, just keep in mind that this is the controller basically we've created, but the only thing you need to actually know to follow along is that basically the model over here is controlled by the resource manager, which is a list that basically has an entry for every character model we can use, and it's every entry has an ID and a prefab. Now I've already included the dummy game object, because Unity has a little bug when changing avatars that have the same size. Okay, but always changing first to dummy before you change to your actual target model you want with. Okay, then basically this circumvents the bug Unity has. So what you need to get is that we're actually going to use only game objects and load and use them as asset bundles. So this list basically takes prefabs, which is these prefabs we're going to see over here. Okay, and if it was somewhere over here, as I showed before, just a game object and an animator, nothing else. Of course it's a humanoid because our system is humanoid. Okay, and now I just drop the models and make them prefabs. Since they are prefabs, I can set them. Now I can set pretty much everything as as an asset bundle except scripts. Okay, you cannot include scripts into your asset bundles. So I have created basically 3 teams or 3 groups of asset bundles, or the actual asset bundles if you will, which one is the character models, the character models mode, even though we won't use this anymore. Okay, and I can actually delete this, doesn't matter, and the character models for the web. Basically I just decide which ones are for the web and which prefabs I have are for the ones we're going to use locally. And since this one is for the mod, I can actually delete this and come over here and say remove unused names. Okay, the dummy, as I said, will always load into, will already be loaded into our resource manager, so we always know that the 0 entry into our character models list over here will always be the dummy. So basically our setup is we want to load game objects and have them inside this list. Okay, that's what you need to take. We've created our prefabs, we've set up the asset bundle themes. Now there is also variations you can have on asset bundles, but we're not going to see it in this video. Okay, so let's start with load assets locally. To actually create though the asset bundles, we need to have the same script we saw previously. Okay, but what we're going to add is the if statement. If we are using the Unity editor, then basically compile the script. If you are not using the Unity editor, then do not use any of this code. And we do that because if I remove this without this if statement, when you build, you're actually going to get a compiler error. Okay, because it won't find the Unity editor namespace. Okay, so with this, just make sure that this script is only used when you are using the Unity editor. So let's go to load asset locally. We're going to use the input-output system, a public string which is the asset bundle name we're going to use, and these 2 references are for the resource manager, is basically what holds the list which we're going to populate. Okay, so we use the IEnumerator for start. This is a coroutine that's going to play as soon as we start the game. Okay, and it's going to be called after the awake step Unity has. We get the references with our singleton. Our UI menu is what holds basically for the menu we have for the project, and the resource manager is, as I said, what loads our list. The UI menu has the whole loading text that you see. Okay, this is just so that we know that it's loading. It's a bit of polishing, it's not really needed. Let's actually see the asset bundles. We set up the variable for the bundle loader request, and we can use asset bundle and load from file async. You can also do not load it async, but that will mean that if it's a lot of files, or if it's a big size, then it's going to seem like it freezes. So it's better always to load stuff asynchronous. Okay, so we use asset bundles, load from file async, path.combine. It basically takes the combined application streaming assets path, and you can debug this, of course, to actually see what it is, the actual path. And basically it's going to combine the streaming assets path and the asset bundle name we're passing in the inspector. We're going to yield return until our bundle request has finished, and after that we're going to see a loaded asset bundle, we're going to use bundle load request. Okay, dot asset bundle. Now, this pretty much almost a copy paste from the scripting API. Okay, so we're going to check if a loaded asset bundle is null, then we have failed to load the asset bundle, so yield break. Otherwise, we're going to probably either get an error or even crash unit. So if we actually have an asset bundle loaded, we can use an array of game objects, since we know we'll only be loading game objects inside this in this asset bundle. Okay, so asset load request. From the loaded asset bundle, we can use load all assets of game objects. So it's going to load every game object it finds inside the bundle. Here return asset load request, and for each game object we find in the asset load request inside this array, we can create a new entry for a character model. We assign the ID from the same name that the game object has. Okay, right now it's character whatever we have named the prefab basically, and we assign the prefab inside the entry of our character model list. Let's pick the definition. Okay, this is the class, and we just have it as a list over here. Okay, very simple stuff, and we just add them into our resource manager, into our character models list. Okay, and basically this is like going manually and adding a new entry into the character model list, assigning the prefab and the ID. This just loads everything from the asset bundle. Now, what we can actually see for the way I did the modes. Now, of course, there are other ways, but here's a quick and dirty way how we can do that. We can check if a file exists with the same path combined name, the same application streaming asset path, and the same asset bundle name, plus the prefix of mode. Then, instead of continuing on with the asset bundle, and we probably should have loaded somewhere, and we will do it in a bit. So, okay, so if it finds another file that has the same name as the asset bundle name, but has the prefix of mode, then instead of continuing and closing the coroutine, it will start the other coroutine we have, which is check for modes. What check for mode is basically a copy paste of this one, and actually it's exactly a copy paste like this one, but where we are passing the name, we also pass the prefix of mode. Okay, so it's going to continue doing the rest. Okay, finds the asset bundle, loads the asset bundle. If it's not null, it's going to store in an array all the game objects from that asset bundle, and for each game object it's going to create a new entry for the character model list and add them into the character model list. And at the end it's going to unload this, and we can actually come over here and Control C and unload it too. Okay, since there's no reason to keep it stored in memory, since we already have it. Okay, so we're going to save. This is basically how you load assets from asset bundle. Now, let's see the other way, which is to load assets from the web. Okay, we have our asset manager over here, and we have our load asset local, and I only need to pass the asset bundle lane of character models. If you remember, I said that all my characters are going to have by default is going to be on the bundle name of character models. Okay. So for the other, for loading assets from the web, we need to do things slightly differently. I'm going to open this, and we're going to also include using system, both with input output, or although I think we might actually not need input output. So basically this assumes that you either use one or the other. Okay, it's not really I haven't made it so that it can use both, and the way I'm using over here will always download it from the URL I'm passing. But there is another way where there is also load from cache or download, which we're going to see another time. So we have integer for version, although we're not really using it, and I'm not actually using it over here. So let's delete this. And previously, the same as before, asset bundle name, a reference to our menu, which has all the references for the menu, of course, and the resource manager, which is initialized by the singleton, and we say to the UI manager that you're loading. So we need to use using, and we create a new 3W over here. We're also going to name it 3W, and we create a new 3W, and over here, instead of URL master, I just have it as a public string, a static string over here, because I didn't want to just pass the URL directly. But over here you will use your actual URL. So if your server is http.youtube.com or whatever, you actually need to pass the actual name of the asset bundle. So when you create your asset bundles, you need to pass not to manifest the character model itself. Okay, but there is a catch. Whenever you upload your asset bundles, okay, you need to upload both of these. You need to actually upload them as a binary file, okay, not just like this. Otherwise, if you do not upload it as a binary file, you will see that Unity is going to give you an error that says that it cannot uncompress the file. Okay, so keep in mind that when you are uploading files on your server, the asset bundles anyway, or not files, okay, they need to be on as a binary file. Okay, so if the www has a string that is null, it's basically out. If it has an error, it outputs a string value. Okay, so if the error is not equals null, then it will throw an exception that you will say www download had an error plus the actual error. If it doesn't, then it's going to continue, and you can come over here and say on the asset bundles, my loaded asset bundle will equal the asset bundle we have on our www or www as you say it. Okay, so if loaded asset bundle equals null, then no bundle was found. If we have a loaded asset bundle though, then similarly as before, we store all assets that are game objects, are a type of game object, and for each game object we have into our loaded assets, then we create a new entry for our character model list. We assign the ID, we assign the prefab, which is basically the prefab is what we actually load from the asset bundle, and then add it as an entry into our character model list. And of course, we unload the asset bundle and we say to the UI menu or manager or whatever you want to call it that it's false. Okay, so basically that's how simple it is to load assets and load to either from file, load assets from file, or load assets from web. Now of course for this I haven't even you cannot just check for mods with this. Okay, you have to think something else about that. And of course there's also you probably need to do some integrations with well, basically if you are on Steam you'll have to do integrations with Steam Workshop. But the procedure for all of it, the basics for how to use the asset bundles, is what we saw over here. Okay, this is how we find asset bundles, this is how we load them. Now of course you can add a few more if statements here and there to make sure that you do not get any errors, but so far any errors are encountered weren't actually game breaking. Okay, so with this you can come. Of course now you actually have to build your character models, your prefabs. You need to go and build asset bundles, and I'm not going to do it right now. And when you create them, they're going to be assigned asset bundles. To test them though inside Unity, you need to assign them inside streaming assets. Okay, so you need to cut and to copy paste them over here. Now you need to have also the asset bundles in your own build for your current platform, but you do not have to assign the character models. Okay, so basically, as I show you in the modding, where I just copy paste the asset bundle for the mod in quotes. Okay, I didn't take the other file that is created. So basically, for every asset bundle you create, it's going to also create a platform, a file for the platform you're using. So as far as asset bundles are concerned, that was it. If you want, stay on and you can see how I actually implement it into the game, into the project we have created over here. Now we need to do some canvas work before we actually assign the stuff. And let's see the canvas. Okay, start game, you can know what it is, just load the other level. We have our titles and a grid that underneath it comes another button, which is the character name, which basically is a prefab that is created, and it's a grid because we are going to create each one of these buttons based on how many models we are loading from the asset bundles. Okay, and since it's a grid, Unity automatically assigns them one beneath the other. So we do not have to create 1,000 of buttons if we want to load 1,000 models. Okay, we can just assign them directly with a grid. Now the button is pretty much the buttons that you get from UI button. Just remove the sprite. Now the other thing we have to check is to actually create this new script, and I'm going to open it over here. It basically holds the reference to the model ID, which is the string with the actual model, and the icon text is the text reference, and it needs a reference to the UI menu. The UI menu is a class that we should probably watch by itself. Okay, it has all this because it needs all the reference to both to the UI, to the scene management, and the list. Yeah, it doesn't need the list, so it doesn't need generic. And it takes the text, the load text is, as you can guess, is this loading text. Okay, just a text, just a panel, and inside it there is a text. And I'm going to close it. The menu has all this stuff over here, and I have it under the same game object, so I can open and close it. The load UI is the actual game object that has the loading text, and the select model menu is the menu we actually saw. But it's not the game object, it's another script we're going to assign over here. And what this has is basically has a reference to the resource manager, the prefab for the buttons I just saw you for the models, and a reference to the transform that is the actual grid. Okay, and if I didn't forget to delete variables. Okay, so it has, instead of having a start, I actually want to control when I initialize this script, so I make it a public variable of init. So on our UI menu, I just can assign it directly. And I wanted to use, I can also make this a singleton and assign it from there, but yeah, it just doesn't matter. We don't really have to make it a singleton. We can just assign it, drag and drop it from the inspector. Target model ID, the target model ID, and the state manager is the script we have in our controller. This is pretty much the same model, the same game object we use when we are inside the game, but I've just removed the input handler since we're not using it. I disabled, or you can even remove this, the player movement and the handle animations, since this has a different animator with only one animation, the one that he's leaning on the wall. Okay, so there are no parameters or anything over here, and you can either enable or disable apply root motion, doesn't matter. Okay, basically this, because these two scripts were doing stuff over here, or trying to change parameters that do not exist inside this animator, then you will getting errors. But if you close this, then you won't be having any problems. Now, and of course make the rigid body kinematic, otherwise it's going to fall through the ground. So we have our state manager, which basically holds all the references for all the weapons and all that. Okay, if you watch the previous videos, you will understand that. And the reason why we use the state manager is because we have some other reference over there. So load timer, indexed how many times we basically added a dot into our loading. So in update, if our UI menu says we are loading and the menu is active in hierarchy, the main menu, select menu, all that, okay, then just close it. Open the game object that has the loading text and start adding to the timer. For every half a second that passes, reset the timer, and basically if the indexed how many times we added a dot into our text, if it's lower than 3, then add another dot. Otherwise, reset the text to loading and the index to 0. So just basically it's the policing that adds loading and adds another dot at the end. Now, if it's not loading and the main menu game object is actually disabled is not active in the hierarchy, then enable it and then call the init function. So then it's going to come into the main menu, let's pick it once again. So then it's going to come over here and then create a button for every game object. So basically this is what creates the buttons over here. It's going to take the reference to the resource manager, and for every model it finds inside the character model list, it's going to create a new button. It's going to assign it under the model buttons grid, and it's going to take the reference to the model select button. R stands for reference. Okay, and it's going to change the model ID for that model select button to whatever ID the character model had, and it's going to change the text to say the actual model ID. Okay, so here's where we can go back to model select button, and we have this public void switch model. To actually switch the model, so this function goes into your button, goes over here. Okay, you just drag and drop it and assign it and find model select button, switch model. You do not have to do anything else. All it does, takes the model ID which is assigned by the resource manager, and inside the resource manager, or I just call it from because I do not want to just pass a reference over everywhere, I'll just call it into the UI menu, and let's go back to the definition. Okay, so initialize the menu and closes the loading text. So the UI model select button, when the player actually clicks that model, it passes the model ID to this function, which in turn calls the resource manager and calls a function that we created, which is similar to what we created previously onto our resource manager. Okay, previously we had switch character model with an index. We were passing the state manager and we were also passing the integer. Okay, and then we were starting the coroutine to switch character, and as we saw on the previous part, okay, just go and do the same, all the stuff you have to do. But the only addition we have, I've added this thing, and I've also added an active model index, a place to actually store which was the active model index, and we assign it over here. Basically, after you find a model, you destroy the previous model and assign all the references and all the shareable objects we saw. Okay, just assign to the active model index the target index you are passing. And since this is the resource manager, I've also added on awake do not destroy on load, because we want to take the resource manager to every level we're going. So the new function we're going to use is switch character model with ID. We pass the state manager, and we also pass, instead of passing the integer, we pass the ID. Now from the ID we can actually find the integer, the index. Okay, so since we know the index, we can just call this we basically have the index, so we do not have to call this. We can directly call switch character with target index. Okay, and it will first switch with a dummy and then switch to the actual target we want to have. Okay, very simple stuff. I do not think you will have any problems with it. And let's go back to our UI menu. Public void load level is when the player actually clicks the start game. We assign this into the start game. Okay, load level. And since we are loading the level asynchronous, we say loading is true. So what it's going to do is come over here and say and play the loading text. Now this is a little dangerous because if the loading turns false, but right now there is no way it could turn false. Okay, so it's not that dangerous. Then it will go and play all this again, and it's something you don't want, but there's no other way where I'm turning loading to false, so it doesn't matter. Okay, and of course it's a singleton, and that's basically most of the stuff we have to do. Okay, if I click play and do not delete my character button over here, it's just going to add it into, it's already in the list, so it's going to add it over here. But if I click character name, you see we get an error because there is no model ID, so there is no reference to find, no model to find and return. So make this a prefab and drop it over here. Assign the references to your menu, to your start game, and to your actually asset manager. Okay. Now you do not have to use actually the same game objects, but for the resource manager you actually need to keep it onto a different game object, since this game object will never be destroyed and everything underneath the resource manager will also never be destroyed. So you can have the reference you have over here. Make sure you keep the correct you use the correct asset bundle names. Okay, and target model ID, I think we do not even use this. So as far as the main menu or the menu we have over here is concerned, we are done. Just make sure you assign all the references you will need. And let me check my script so I'll make sure that I did not forget anything. And we didn't. Now let's unmaximize this. Let's hit play. Let's let it load and let's see what happens when we're actually loading the level. I'm going to change the character to this one and let's click start game. Okay, it loaded the level and you will see that we have our resource manager with all our references loaded once again. So I can go previously to the way we were doing changes to the way we were changing our character basically, but let me unlock my cursor first. Okay, I can go to the previous way and probably if I click switch target, let's make it to 1, it changes without having any problems. Okay, simple as that. Now there is some changes we have to do on to this level though, because the way we left it before. Yeah, save. The way we left it before, we had a resource manager, so we need to delete that. And I've also had it to switch stagger, you probably didn't. Okay, so it was running on start. And that's basically it. Now you probably, when you are loading a level, you won't have your character to directly have control of another character. So you probably fade into your level. And I did a few changes, I think, on the weapon manager. Yeah, I just added if you want to start unarmed or if you want to add more weapons than one. So let's just see it. Okay, just a bull if you want to start unarmed and if you want to add an additional weapon. So to check if you want to add into available weapons another weapon apart from the weapon index, we check if the sum of the add weapon plus the weapon index is not equals the weapon index, so that means that you actually assign the value to this, it's not 0. Okay, then just go and use the add weapon. Basically the add weapon is you add it on the weapon index, just a simple fast way to do this. Okay, and if you want to start an arm, then on start switch weapon with target weapon, and instead of passing an actual weapon, pass the unarmed one. And that's just it. Now, I think we're pretty much done with this, and I think you will not have too much problem with it. It was actually really easy to set the whole system up, either it is with local assets or from web. I think you won't have too many problems. So, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and consider supporting me either on Patreon or with Gumroad, whichever you prefer, so we can continue keep creating cool content like this. So, I'll see you next time.